Greetings, my fellow swans, beautiful people. I think it's time we let our true angelic selves come out. I've been thinking a lot about the wee folk lately. So, in episode 47 of the He Mistook Her for a Swan emergency broadcasting system, brought to you this week by our sponsors, the plague. Let's think about the wee people. It's National Sticky Buns Day, you know. So there's really nothing bad to be said about that. In fact, yeah, if you can get some sticky buns, get them immediately. Other than that, good news. Valerie June is making some new music. It's coming out next month. That's exciting to me, okay? And besides that, one should always be careful when using an outhouse. We learned that this week because some lady opened up the lid of the crapper, sat down, and a bear was down there and bit her ass. So, yeah, I'm gonna go this way now. Okay. Anyway, make some angels, and yeah, on with the show. The Wee People, episode 47.
Fairies, elves, goblins, wee folk, the good folk, the strangers. I like that, the strangers. The people of the mound. Supernatural beings. Ancient people had supernatural beings on their mind a lot. And rightfully so, because supernatural beings could really wreck your day, right? They can make you sick. They can make your crops fail. They can make your life miserable. So I think the motto of ancient people is basically, could be summed up as, don't fuck with fairies, okay? Because whenever people and fairies or elves or the supernatural beings get together, it usually turns out poorly for the people. So I look at this in folk songs. Like, you just look through the child ballads, and without even breaking a sweat, I can come up with 10 or 15 child ballads that are all about people and elves, or people and fairies, or people and magicians. And it's usually usually doesn't end well, to tell the truth. You know, we had the Elfin Knight the other week. This week I'm going to do Lady Isabel and the Elf Knight, and it's a cool old song. Basically, Lady Isabel is a princess, and she's sitting up there in her castle, and I guess she's lonely and horny, and she kind of conjures up this elf guy, and the elf guy says, "Well, geez, what do you want? All right, well, let's go for a ride." And they go off into the woods for a ride, and basically then he tries to murder her. And not only her, he's a serial killer. He has killed 7 other princesses already, and he wants to kill her too. Well, this is terrible. You know, this is not a romantic outing. This is not a picnic in the park. There's another one, a very famous ballad called Tam Lin. Steel Eye Span did it. Pentangle did it. Fairport Convention did it. Like, everybody's done it. It's pretty famous. Anne Briggs did a fantastic version, but she called it Young Tambling. But it's the same story. And basically, it's this young fellow basically gets abducted by the Queen of Fairyland, and they make him live there in Fairyland for years and years, and then they're going to sell him. They're going to give him to the devil, because every 7 years the fairies have to give the devil his due, or else they might have to go to hell themselves. So they're going to give this guy to the devil, and somehow he escapes, and there's all sorts of shape-shifting, and it's truly terrifying, right? And at the end he escapes, and the Queen of Elfland is pissed. Holy mackerel. In the last verse of Anne Briggs' song, Young Tambling, you should take a listen to that. It's fantastic, by the way. It says, the Queen of Elfland, she's red as any blood, and she said, "I should have torn out your eyes, Tambling. I should have torn out your eyes and put in eyes of wood." Well, holy smokes. That is terrible. You know, so like I said, don't fuck with fairies. You know, this whole Victorian concept of fairies as, you know, friendly little Tinkerbell, you know, little people that are like, you know, gonna do you a favor or something. This was never even thought of in the old days. Basically, fairies, the more you could avoid them, the better. So there was like a brisk trade in like potions and spells and trinkets, like anything so you didn't have to do with fairies, right? Iron would keep the fairies from crossing your doorstep. So it was always good to have a little iron, under your bed, even in your pocket. Carry a nail in your pocket. These are things ancient people had to think about, because they could be taken off to fairyland and it would have been a miserable time. It would have wrecked their day, basically. So, there's a lot of things you can say about these little people, these supernatural beings. Every country in the world has them. But you got to say that in Britain and Ireland, it goes to a whole nother level. It's like they're from there. And so it's pretty fascinating, the whole history of fairies and supernatural beings in England. They're supposed to be mostly incredibly, impossibly beautiful, except when they're not, when they're hideously ugly. They'll swap out your baby and put in a changeling. Who wants that? That's holy Rosemary's Baby kind of nonsense. You don't need that trouble, right? They'll turn you into a worm. They'll trade you to the devil. They seem to be horny a lot. A lot of these songs involve like an elf, kind of trying to get it on with the princess or the queen of fairyland, kind of keeping the prince around for the right moment. So, like I said, they're known by a lot of different names: nymphs, elves, goblins, wee folk, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to do a little preemptive self-pardon here because some of these words are Irish, and I have a hard time with it, and I'm going to do the best I can, but, cut me some slack, okay? Because Irish spelling is weird, and I got to say I don't get it, mostly. So the people of the Mounds, they're called, are also known as the Aichi, okay? So there's one already. Some people say they just live among us and they're kind of invisible and they're going about their daily business, going to work, checking in, working at the call center or something, the ferry call center. And they just kind of, they don't pay much attention to us unless we piss them off. Now they do have little homes and little areas that they like. So like if you go and wreck or dig up one of their homes or something, you're so asking for trouble. Holy smokes, you are going to be in serious trouble. Christians, you'd think that the Christians wouldn't believe it at all, but no. In Britain and Ireland, they made a little room for fairies and elves and the wee folk, and basically they thought that they were kind of angels that just got kicked out of heaven. Like they were not good enough to be in heaven, but they weren't bad enough to be in hell. So they just kind of roamed around the earth and were kind of troublesome to people. And so that's one concept. Some people that say they're the spirits of the dead. That's another concept, but I don't know if I buy that. Here's what I think, and this is what a lot of other people think, is that they're kind of remnants, or they're leftovers from the old pagan religion, the ancient religion of Britain and Ireland. That kind of sounds about right to me. So, because all over Ireland and Britain, there are remnants of this ancient people, and they built these giant mounds that are called She. It's not spelled like that, but it's pronounced like that, okay? And the greatest of them all is this place in Ireland called New Grange. And it is a gigantic tomb. It's got like this big stone gate opening. And it also seems to be have an astronomical purpose. Like it kind of lines up at a specific time of year. So kind of like Stonehenge, right? But it's older than Stonehenge. So here's the dealio, buddies. This thing was built in 3200 BC. That's 600 years before the pyramids. Okay? Like we normally think of ancient Britons as these bumbling peasants like Monty Python guys. But these guys built a fucking pyramid 600 years before Egypt or Babylon. So this is pretty fascinating stuff. What the hell? So I think maybe what we should do, let's take a couple minutes and just quickly recap the history of human habitation in the British Isles. Okay? Doesn't that sound fascinating? It actually is, okay? Hang on. All right, Sherman, set the Wayback Machine to 180,000 BC. So between 180,000 BC and 60,000 BC, there were no people living in Britain or Ireland. You know, maybe some guy took a wrong turn at Albuquerque and took a look around and left. But there is basically no evidence of sustained human habitation for those 100,000 years or more. And the reason is, it was the Ice Age. It was damn cold, and if all you had to wear was a jockstrap and a mink stole, you were going to freeze your ass off and die. So nobody went there. It was just miserable. Then later on, you know, after 60,000 BC, a few Neanderthals showed up and they tried to make a go of it. Neanderthals, you know, human 1.0. It was revolutionary, it was a great idea, but there were bugs. There were bugs in 1.0, okay? Then by about 12,000 BC, you start to see sustained human habitation in Britain and Ireland. The thing to remember here is, in those days, Britain wasn't an island. It was attached to Europe. And archaeologists have this name for this bit of land that kind of attached what is Britain today and sort of Netherlands. And they called it Doggerland. Get those dogs out of here. Anyway, Doggerland was a great place to live, you know. It had great land for farming, it had lots of animals for hunting, it was pretty temperate, you know. It was a fantastic place to live, you know. But all good things come to an end. And in this case, they came to an end because up there in Norway somewhere, under the ocean, there was this giant avalanche that caused a tsunami. And it wiped out Doggerland, and at that point, Britain became an island. So that was about 6,000 BC. Anyway, so in about 3,500 BC, there is a pretty serious civilization going on in Britain and Ireland. And it's a pretty advanced people. And they haven't left us any writing or anything, but we know they were there because they built these giant mounds called She. And they're all over the place, but you know, the greatest ones are in Ireland, but they're in Britain as well. And they're giant burial mounds, basically, for kings and I guess priests and gods and whoever you can bury. But they're also, they seem to be kind of churches or places for religious activity. And they also have an astronomical aspect because they're built so they line up with the sun and the moon at specific season changes. So these people, they know their calendar. They've got the means to build these giant things, which, you know, takes some doing. Don't remember, this is 600 years before they built the pyramids. So, yeah, they got a pretty serious, they got a sweet little civilization going there. So, as I said, all good things coming to an end. And around 2500 BC, there's this new batch of people show up on the horizon, and they pretty much take over. The archaeologists call these people the Beaker People. Okay, so you can well imagine, like thousands of Johnny Rottens, you know, just coming, running at you, cussing, spitting, they're all wiry and angry, and of course they win. So they pretty much take over, and when the Beaker People take over, that's the end of the building of these giant She monuments. It's over, right? But the Beaker People, you know, they got a pretty sweet deal because they know how to mine, and there's tin in Britain, and you need tin to make bronze. So it's the Bronze Age. So they're laughing. They're selling their tin all over Europe and just like sitting back and, you know, having a fine time of it. So in Irish myth, this clash of civilizations, this change seems to be recorded. So in Irish myth, there's this ancient people, the original inhabitants, and they're called the Tua Di Dinan. Pardon my Irish pronunciation, please, as I said. And basically it means they're the people of the goddess Danu, and they had a whole set of gods, you know, just like anybody else. They got the main guy, the Dagda, he's like their Zeus or Odin or whatever. They got Angus, Lugh, Brigid, you know, gods and goddesses doing what gods and goddesses do, they had this whole pantheon, and they had heroes, they had their own Hercules guys like Finn McCool and Cuchulainn, and all these legends, we still have them today. They somehow survived by word of mouth, and they come down to us. So part of this whole legend is that at some point, Ireland was invaded by these foreign people. And in the myth, they call these foreign people the Milesians, not the Malaysians. They're not from Malaysia, for God's sakes. That's too far. Milesians with an I. That's what they call them. And it could be that these Milesians were actually the Beaker people. And anyway, in the stories, there's all these big battles. There's magic, there's lightning and thunderbolts thrown around, and all sorts of magical things happen. And finally, the Tuatha Dé Danann, they call a truce. They say, time out. Let's go to our rooms and think about what we've done, okay? So the Malaysians, they go, okay, we're going to have a little truce. So the Malaysians are in boats, apparently, and they're waiting offshore, But the Tuatha Dé Danann, they still got some tricks up their sleeves, and they try and conjure up a magical storm to sink the Malaysians' boats. So the Malaysians, they got this poet guy called Emergen, and he is so powerful with his poetry that he calms the water. Isn't this great? This is fantastic. This is what we love about folk music and folklore, is in those days, poetry had power. Okay, so this guy basically calms the waves and stymies the other team. So the Tuatha Dé Danann, they come to the table and they said, okay, we'll talk. And they basically agree that they're going to share the land. But the Malaysians, they're clever dudes, and they outwit them. And they say, okay, we're going to split it 50-50. We'll take everything above ground, and you can have everything below ground. So the Tuatha Dé Danann voluntarily retreat to their She, where they live to this very day. They come out once in a while. There's words like banshee. And ban is just Irish for woman. So banshee is just a woman from the She, and they come out once in a while. And I think probably elves and fairies are the same thing, they're kind of underground. They come out every once in a while, and if they're horny, or if you piss them off, and they'll swap your baby out for a little demon, and the whole Rosemary's Baby thing and all that stuff. So anyway, in about 800 BC, the Celts show up, and then they wipe these guys out, and then later on, the Romans come, that's about 40 BC, and they hang on to it for a while, but they don't really care that much. And then when the Romans leave, the Anglo Saxons come in, and they take over. So even in those riddles we talked about in the Exeter book, the Anglo Saxons, they really do, they push the Britons out, who were the Celts, who were there before. There's a bunch of references in those riddles to the Welsh people and other Celts as just slaves. They were the lower class people for the Anglo-Saxons. So there you go. There's the whole history of England in under 10 minutes, and it all comes out and it comes back to this folk music, right? So I'm going to do this song called Lady Isabel and the Elf Knight. And it's an interesting song. Basically, like I said, Lady Isabel conjures up the elf, and he takes her off to murder her. Now, this song, like all the other ones, has a billion versions. And in America, it has turned into that song Pretty Polly, which is just the scariest. Actually, all the versions of this song are scary. It's really like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all of them. But Pretty Polly is a nasty, nasty piece of work. And Doc Boggs has done it. And actually, Bert Jansch did a nice, scary version of it. And basically, the elf turns just into a person. And, the guy talks Pretty Polly into going out in the woods with him. And there's a fresh dug grave. And she pleads for her life. And he kills her anyway. And I'm sick and tired of that bullshit. So there is in a lot of the versions of the original song, the about Isabel, Lady Isabel, she actually tricks her assailant, and she kills him. So I think, the ladies are always getting killed in these folk songs. I think it's time for a little girl power. So I've worked up this version, and hopefully it's scary enough for you. I'm hoping everybody is still, happy and healthy and sane. I know we're still locked down here in Toronto anyway. I don't know where you guys are, but hang in there, and we're gonna make it better. All right. So you guys be good. And here's my version of Lady Isabel in the Elf Night. Have a good one.
Lady Isabella sits in her window a-sewing. There she heard an elf knight's horn a-blowing. If I had the horn I hear blowing, and you, elf knight, to be here beside me. The maiden had hardly spoken these words, but at her window the elf knight had opened. It's a very strange matter, fair maiden, he said. I can't blow my horn, but you call on me. Will you come with me to the Greenwood side? If you can go with me, I've got horses to ride. He leapt on a horse, she on another, and they rode on to the Greenwood together. Lay down, Lady Isabel, said he. We're come to the place where you are to die. Have mercy, kind sir, on me. Till my dear father and mother again I can see. Seven kings' daughters here have slain, and you'll be the eight of them here on this day. Oh, sit down a while, lay your head on my knee, so we may have some rest here before I die. She stroked his hair, she kissed him sweet. With this small charm, she lulled him to sleep. With his own sword belt fast, she bound him, and with his dagger, she stood and she stabbed him. If seven kings' daughters you have here slain, lie here as a husband to them again. You can lie here as a husband to them. Lie here as a husband to them.